The 71 Mayacamas Cabernet was one of the Judgement of Paris wines. It's a pretty incredible honor for me to get the chance to open it and talk about it. I almost feel like I'm not worthy. There are not very many bottles of this around. Luckily, Bob Travers, he was pretty regimented about his library program, so that in a lot of years he would hold back 100 cases and make sure it was re-released at a regular interval. So we're lucky to get to have a good chunk of the 70s still around and in dwindling quantities. 71's kind of no exception to that, and we don't get to open it very much, but when we do, it's usually pretty special. For a lot of reasons, Mayacamas related and otherwise. I mean, my family's been growing grapes in Napa since the late 1800s, similar to the age of Mayacamas. I've always heard a lot of stories about the winemaking kind of revolution, more or less, that was happening during the 70s in Napa, and getting a chance to work at a place that really had roots in that legacy it really made me excited to get a chance to contribute to it. One of the things I think that's probably the most important factor about what we're doing now compared to what they were doing in 71, the wine style has remained almost intact, and so it really still does influence what we're doing, from pick decision, how we're farming, and what we're doing in the cellar to kind of match stylistically what was done in the 70s. Do those individual vintages necessarily impact what we're thinking in a certain year? No, but that philosophy in general that was pioneered back in the late 60s, early 70s still really has a big impact on what we're doing. I do think that, Stephen and Patricia, I mean, that sort of how forward-thinking they were in bringing these California wines to a global stage. I mean, we're certainly indebted to them. It's really what put Napa and California wines on the map. In terms of, obviously the wine quality was there, the grape growing region, what makes Napa and these properties special was there, but really showing them to the world was, that's really kind of how it started. And so they're kind of the original tastemakers in some sense. And we're thankful that they picked us. I mean, as a representative, because it's truly helped us have the longevity that we've been able to have for sure. In 1971, Mayacamas was a rustic farm. I mean, as so many vineyards were in Napa Valley at that time, it wasn't about these luxury, kind of glamorous vineyard estates. It was really about multi-crop farming in a lot of ways, and grapes were one of them. Obviously, things were changing pretty rapidly at that time, but it was definitely more bootstrap. This cellar that we're in is 131 years old now. Obviously, a little bit younger then, but still very much old school in terms of all the winemaking practices that are housed in this building. In some sense, I don't think it was all that different than what we're doing now, which is, to me, really important. We're still using a lot of the same casks downstairs that were being used in 71. I mean, we have tank 8's almost 100 years old now. Those were used to make this wine, and we're still using them now. So we really have thought deeply about what winemaking was like here in 71 and the 70s in general, and tried to figure out a way to make sure that what we're doing now really helps bring that style through. Like I said, I don't think I've opened personally, I've only opened one. This is a legend right here. I mean, to say that it's a special treat is an understatement. And like I said, it's the 70s as a decade, really 68 to 80 at Mayacamas. It's gonna be a surgery here. It's kind of a prerequisite for working at Mayacamas. You got to learn how to open old bottles. I think we opened this right at the perfect time. Cork has become such an important part of the finishing process for winemaking, and you have a certain duration of time, but you're gonna be lucky enough to have a good cork in there, and you always hope that you capture it at the right moment. We put a lot of time and effort now into making sure we're choosing the best quality and taking a lot of care and putting it in. That way we can talk about getting a chance to open the wines we're making now, 20, 30, 50 years down the road. Because anything we do in the cellar, if you have a bad cork, doesn't really matter. So this one's pretty, it's pretty solid still. It's definitely saturated, but you have the tip of it that's not saturated at all. And I think it's gonna be in pretty good shape. This is, to me, this is what we're trying to live up to. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with making the wines at Mayacamas, and we look back quite a bit. These are kind of our benchmark wines: 71, 74, 78, well, 1970 as well. I mean, really the whole decade, like I've talked about, the 1970s. Because they age so incredibly beautiful. They're still very fresh. Obviously getting into the savory notes, much more so now than when they were young, but you're kind of teetering on the forest floor descriptors that you talk about when you talk about classic Bordeaux aged Cabernets. And I mean, what's remarkable to me is this is still got another 2 decades that it'll hold up. It's not young, but it's definitely not over the hill. If we're lucky enough to make a wine that stands up to time the way this does, I'll think of us as making a successful wine. And if we're kind of making wines that don't last 50, 60 years, like this one, we'll kind of have missed the mark. We think about all the different technologies that go into winemaking now. We have all these incredible machines to kind of help us make sure we're picking at the right time and sort things so that there's not a berry that's not perfect. That was not the case at this point in time, and the wines are incredible. It's certainly been something that we've thought a lot about, where maybe we can do too much. Maybe we can overanalyze what we're doing. Sometimes less is more. Every time I get a chance to open a bottle from this era, that's really one of the things that's striking to me as a winemaker who's trying to emulate this style. You want to be constantly improving. You want to always, be striving to make a better wine every year with paying respect to the year that you're in. And, I think oftentimes you're looking sometimes outside of your skill, and you're looking into, improvements technologically. And we've thought so many times about, maybe the extra sorting table isn't needed. Maybe berry sorting is not quite the route we should go. Maybe we should be cluster sorting. Looking back at the harvest notebooks that Bob Travers and Bob Sessions put together for us as a guidebook from the wines that we were inspired by, what were they doing? I think that's really driven a lot of what we're about now, which is, to me, it's an important lesson, and it's something that we don't take lightly up here. I mean, it's certainly something that drives us. To me, it's got like kind of almost like a tobacco, almost like a toasted pine nut taste at this point. In terms of fruit, it's still kind of almost, it's definitely kind of in the raspberry red fruit category, raspberry pomegranate. If you think about the area around Mayacamas, you get into the forests up here. There's tends to be a lot of bay, and I'm getting a lot of bay off of this right now. You get into these savory spices, and this is just kind of screaming of bay right now. Still plenty of mid palate too, which is pretty impressive. I mean, I have to go back and look at what the blend was, but it almost seems like there probably is a touch of Merlot or Cab Franc in it. It's not quite as angular and tannic as I would guess if it was 100% Cabernet. It definitely could be. I don't know the exact blend on it. I could find out, but it's got a mid palate that is that is really round and delicious. You know, it's really humbling. I mean, these are the legends, and there's a series of classes of winemakers that have come before me, and the Paris tasting classes really set the bar pretty high for a lot of us young winemakers. Winemaking it's as much about what you bring to the table as it is about looking to your mentors and learning from them, so you kind of better your process throughout your winemaking career. And you getting a chance to try these wines in glass, talk to these legends, it really has made a big impact on me. And you know, it's you kind of pinch yourself as a young winemaker to get to, I wouldn't even say be spoken about in the same sense as them, because I don't feel like I've earned it yet. I mean, I've been lucky enough to get to be the caretaker of the Mayacamas winemaking, but I still have a long way to go in terms of you know, making sure I can prove that I can put a wine in glass that, you know, lives this long and tastes as good as it does now. It's certainly it's an honor, but like I said, it's kind of part of my process, and it's just kind of fun to get to hopefully, you know, chat with these guys and figure out what they were doing in the 70s that made these wines the way they are, so we can, you know, make sure that we're being true to the wine styles that really put Napa on the map versus where a lot of Napa winemaking has been going since then, to make sure we're really showcasing what Napa can be in its best light. Probably as young winemakers, maybe more than anything else, we are really fortunate to get to try wines from all over the world, certainly from Bordeaux. Thankfully, I mean, obviously the Bordeaux price points are pretty high, so it's not like we're drinking them all the time, but I'm 100% inspired by the wines that I've been lucky enough to try from the great houses of Bordeaux. Had a few unicorns from places like Mouton and Lafite, and to say that those wines don't inspire me would definitely be doing them a disservice. Like those are some of the most influential wines that I've ever been able to try. We're not trying to do the same thing. It's a much different growing region, and the way that those wines are constructed, depending on where they are in Bordeaux, certainly it's not one-to-one to try and do the same thing here. But obviously, like, you know, we are using the same raw materials, and I've always admired the structure and the restraint that a lot of my favorite Bordeaux houses and vintages showcase. Of all the many influences that we have, it's certainly an important one. It's certainly a very California product at the same time. You know, it is about where we are on Mount Veeder. This particular spot on Mount Veeder, you get into this really kind of site-specific wine that I think is really important. So you are influenced by wines from all over the world, but you're really trying to showcase what your site's about, given those influences.